Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. We have our first panelist all present. It looks like people are trickling in, but the rush has stopped. So again, I want to welcome everyone to the Don't Delay Ability to Pay virtual community event. My name is Whitley Carpenter, and I am the Criminal Justice Staff Attorney at Forward Justice. I want to thank you all for attending tonight. Forward Justice is actively working to transform systems and simultaneously reduce the harm experienced by communities impacted by the criminal justice system. And in doing this, one of our campaigns is the End Criminal Justice Debt North Carolina campaign. And that's our fight to protect poor people and people of color from the exploitation that's inherent in the criminalization of poverty. We work as one of the anchor organizations with the North Carolina Fines and Fees Coalition to address fines and fees related issues across the state. As a coalition, we've been working for years to ease this burden on the poorest of our citizens in North Carolina by these continuously increasing fines, fees, and penalties that are assessed in the North Carolina courts and the criminal justice system. Just this week, we learned that more than 780,000 adults in our state aren't getting enough food because they can't afford it. More than 1 million North Carolinians are at risk of eviction, and 1.4 million are behind on utility payments as the season changes. Jobless workers have lost that boost that they got from federal unemployment insurance, which dampening spending in communities across the state and putting families at risk of being pushed deeper into poverty. Yet, we still see criminal court fines and fees in North Carolina continue to increase in both number and amount, with no standard ability to pay assessment required before imposing these debts on hundreds of people regularly in our courts. So we want to use tonight's event to connect community leaders, elected officials, directly impacted people, and system innovators from across our state to discuss this negative impact of criminal justice debt in our state and how it should be addressed. We're going to start by hearing stories from North Carolina community members who are directly impacted by the criminal legal system and the financial hardship that comes with this exorbitant amount of costs and fees and fines assessed by our courts. We're then going to hear from researchers who study this issue in North Carolina and innovators in different jurisdictions in our state who have developed programs and initiatives that address this problem locally. Next, we're going to hear from North Carolina elected officials as they have a candid panel conversation with a community organizer to discuss this issue and potential solutions. And then we'll wrap up by allowing questions from participants for our panelists. So if you have a question throughout the event, please type it in the Q&A box, the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screen. And we will address those questions at the end of the event. Also, just wanted to add that if you are on social media, hashtags for tonight's event are Don't Delay Ability to Pay and End Criminal Justice Debt NC. So without further ado, I'm going to begin our first panel discussion. And so I'd like to ask that our voices from the directly impacted panelists turn on their cameras. Daquan, we can't see you. Hold on, guys, let's troubleshoot for a second.
Okay, no worries. I usually tell my I just want to check in.
So I didn't know you couldn't see me. It was probably having a problem at first, Whitley, but I'm looking at myself. Y'all still can't see me? So,
can you hear me? Let's see him. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't
know.
Let
me cut the camera off and try it again.
Okay.
Does that work?
We still can't see you, but we can hear you. So I don't know if you want to log out and log back in, or we can just go with the conversation, whichever works the best.
Can you see me now?
No, still can't.
Well, we'll just go ahead and we'll go.
Let's start the conversation. It's fine. We can all hear you.
We don't want to hold it up, and we want to respect everyone's time. Yes, when it comes to dealing with fines and fees, for a person that's re-entering back into society.
Wait, hold on, Daquan. I want to introduce everybody first. Hold on.
Oh, I thought you was asking me. I didn't know. I'm sorry.
So we have Mr. Omar Ankwe of Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, We have Ms. Sangria Noble of Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, and Mr. Daquan Peters of New Hanover County, North Carolina. So I have a few questions that I'm going to ask each of you to respond to. Feel free to make it somewhat conversation style amongst the three of you. I know that's a bit more difficult on Zoom, but we're going to make it work as best that we can. But I'll ask that each of you just start by introducing yourself and then giving a brief description of, on a personal level, how have fines and fees impacted you and your loved ones? And I'll pass it to Daquan. You can start out.
Well, first of all, my name is Daquan Peters. I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina, and here in New Hanover County. Fines and fees has impacted me and my family in a major way, because when you face the decision of paying your fine rather than paying your bills, you're in a situation where you can't pay this fine because you rather have a roof over your head. And it impacted my family to the point where, as if, I've had loved ones that has been returned back, has been incarcerated because they couldn't pay their fine. Their probation extended because they can't pay their fine. And as long as they're on probation, they have to continuously pay their fine. So it was very, a very strenuous situation for me, my brother, my cousins, my father. He just recently passed. When he was dealing with the criminal justice system, I've seen where, because he had to take the money and pay our rent and our light bill 2 weeks later, he ended up back in jail because of that fine that he couldn't pay. And that left my mom's with a burden to be able to take care of the kids on her own. So I would say that.
We'll pass it to Sangria. Sorry. Sangria, it looks like you're on mute. Can you tap the unmute button? There we go.
Okay, hi, my name is Sangria Noble. I am originally from Greensboro, North Carolina, but I reside here in Charlotte. I am a student in the social work department at UNC Charlotte, a senior there. I am also a North Carolina Certified Peer Support Specialist, and I'm a substance abuse counselor intern. And on a personal level, speaking on a recent thing that has happened, it hasn't, the court cost fines and fees has impeded on my admittance into the universities. It is still appearing and showing as it is connected to the charge, although all the charges have been disposed of, and I've been to prison, I've did, my time. I still have a fee that's connected, but it's showing as it's connected as an open fee, but it's nothing merely than a civil suit from an attorney fee, which shouldn't be there. So now it's gaining entrance. So as the entrance has gained, it went from $110 attorney fee to, when it was brought to my attention, it's about $5,000 now. It also is reflecting on my credit from when I'm trying to get student loans or grants. It reflects when I'm renting property or, trying to buy cars or, anything that has something to do with finances. It's reflected on, and it's showing now as open case or civil suit. I've tried to assess the situation by going to Guilford County, but it has not been addressed yet. Other than that, when I was on active probation and I had to pay those court costs and fees, like the 9 months post-release fees and any fees that was attached to any of my cases, it was a burden. It was a burden. It was a scare. I have 5 children. I'm a single parent. All of them rely on me primarily as a mother. So some months it may have came to, do you pay this fee or do you buy groceries or do you pay the light bill? Other than being a single parent, I'm also declared as disabled. So my primary source of income at that time was an SSI, you know, housing, and, you know, and so by the time you do that and pay your bills and, you know, get the children things that they need, you're left really with nothing. And there, but that court costs, fine and fee, and that scare of, are they going to pick me up? Am I going to have to leave my children again? You know, because, you know, I've already I'm bringing myself to self-sufficiency, but this is all that I can do, you know, and then you explain that to the probation officers or to the court system. You know, some would take it in consideration. It depends on who's sitting, you know, or some would say, okay, you're not trying hard enough. Go back and do your 90 days or your 9 months. That's where the setup comes in at. And that's what, you know, speaking out to the community, because at this point now, this is 12 years later, you know, it's still impeding on me because I've been directly impacted. My children have been directly impacted. Well, 2 of them have been directly impacted by the system within. The other 3 are emotionally and mentally impacted, you know, so um, and really it's a setup. It seems like it's a setup. The community, when asking and assessing, when asking the directly impacted, okay, the feedback that I've gotten was, you know, we get out and then we don't fit criteria, as the job says, meaning we have a felony on our record. We're not even fitting criteria for the temp services. So it's the setup again to be a repeated offender. And although some fees may not be nothing but $30, you know, a month or higher. $30 is a lot when you don't have nothing and you're trying to become successful or do the right thing it is to be a parent, to be a functional parent, you know, meaning working with what you have until you gain more. So you know, that's how I've been impacted. You know, I've been impacted. Like I said, I have a son that's been impacted. I have my brother, he's been impacted on a level, I guess a level to where he has something attached to where some taxes, attached tax laws, to where now he's functioning in society with a master's in engineering. But his paychecks are all going to a tax law, which one charge was dismissed and the other one was still, you know, there, but he's paying taxes on that. So he's not really living out here either, you know. So once we've done the things that we've been told to do, you know, in order to be a predominant member again of society, we're still being taken from.
Thank you, Sangria. Omar, will you introduce yourself and tell us how fines and fees have impacted you personally?
Hi, my name's Omar out of Mecklenburg County. I'm North Carolina Second Chance chapter organizer. I'm directly impacted and with court costs, fines, and fees. You know, we all know this was an epidemic. With before the epidemic, these court costs and fines was a problem that was tearing up our communities on the daily. Me personally. Anytime you're on probation, you're probably coming off a prior conviction. Um, you're probably still in a situation where you're trying to find work, trying to find employment. And like Sangria said, like Daquan said, a lot of times with our people, my close peers, my family, my loved ones, a lot of times you have to choose between paying these court costs or making sure my family don't look at me like where's the food and where's the roof over our head. We all know that a lot of times we have people that come out of prison, they do their probation time, they do their parole, they pay their fees, and then somehow once they start their new job and they starting to establish themselves into society, there's extra fees, and like Sangria said, taxes that's stopping them from progressing when they feel like we up against a lot with this record on us, and it's a lot of things that need to be done. I'm gonna let Willie get to some more questions, but yeah, it's become a much more bigger problem to address with the pandemic and the increase in unemployment and the increase in a lot of our people who was already not getting much income, having no income currently.
Now that actually takes me to my next question, Omar. Specifically for you and Daquan, as community organizers, how do you see this impacting the community, especially during this pandemic?
Well, since I got my mic on, I'll go ahead and go. We're going around right now just talking to my community, talking to my peers, having conversations. It's almost, we need to make sure that it's a policy set in place statewide, because there's so many different organizations in different pockets and counties trying to do things locally and trying to do things grassroots wise to help people with these fines and these fees. But we know if it's a policy set in place, or it's something set in place, a guideline that these counties have to go through with certain people who are no longer employed, or who incomes have been took to zero with the recent increase in unemployment. We can somehow police these counties with our organizations. Like, I'll be the first one, I know Daquan would, to volunteer my time to make sure we policing these counties locally with these guidelines in place. Like, we can make things happen if people feel like it's something that's not going to be able to be policed or took care of locally, and be able to get to everybody that needs these services and qualify for these fines to be done away with, and exempt them from paying them. And also people who are in situations where they have jobs and they just don't have the money to take care of themselves to pay these fees. We can police these counties, we can police these people, and we can make sure all these things are being done and put in place.
Thank you, Omar. Daquan, as a community organizer, how do you see this impacting the Wilmington community, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, when you have over, and when you speak of the community, we're talking about a community that's already living below the poverty level. You know, they're already living below the poverty level, even with a job, even with pre-coronavirus, COVID-19. So they're already living below the poverty level. Then you take and add COVID-19 in, and then they lose a job. So now they're in a state of panic. It's all the way around the board, where you're putting someone in a position to be dependent on a system that's already pretty much taken away from them. So now when you put them in that situation, you know, it's a hopeless situation for them. So it's impacting them to the point where as if they don't know what to do, where to go, who to turn to. It's countless people that calls me on a regular basis or encounter me when I'm out and about and ask me, hey man, you know, my probation officer told me they're going to extend my probation because I can't pay a fine. As the sister spoke before, says some probation officers understand, but sometimes it's not the probation officer. It could be the probation officer supervisor that's putting pressure on the supervisor, on the probation officer, and that forces the probation officer to put the pressure on you. When you for an example, you take a single mother of 3, and she can't get a job, she can't work, she can't. Well, I'm not going to say can't, but there's no job available for her, and she has a probation fine. You know, she can't take care of kids. What do you think she's going to do? The first dollar she gets, she's going to take, and she's going to provide for her family before she go and make a decision to be able to pay that fine. And that is an impact because there you go. It's a possibility that she might be taken away from her child because she can't pay this fine. And that's another, to me, another form of oppression. Now you're putting that's an oppressive movement, an oppressive policy that you're implementing during a time where you know that the whole world is pretty much living this way. So even they're thankful to have a job to be able to be on probation at this time in America and all over the world. So now it impacts the community to the point where as if you're going to put people back against the wall to cause them to commit more crime. And then you're going to call because in their mind, that's all they know. The survival. Now you're pushing people to the point of survival, and then you're going to extend the term of imprisonment. Then you're going to do all of these things and add more debt to them. You have people already that's not on probation struggling to get out of debt. So when you take someone that's already living below the poverty level, in debt with the system, it's an invisible shackle is what I think it is. And to be truthfully and honest, if I could speak candid, it's an invisible shackle that go along with what is being done today within the criminal justice system, another form of new Jim Crow. That is how it is impacting our community. That is how our people are living today. That is what we're going through. Why people are playing politics in offices and sitting around in their offices and making decisions for these people. The people that's in the community are suffering, and the people that's in the politics, all they have to do is fix it. It's all they have to do is fix it. Wipe that debt clean. Give somebody a second chance. Give somebody a clean slate. So we can take it back to the community and we can educate them on what's going on. So we can be able to sit down and have a discussion with these brothers and sisters and educate them on how to become more productive within the community, because you can't be productive when you're back against the wall and you live below the poverty level and you're in debt with a system that's already oppressive. So that is how it's affecting my community.
Thank you, Daquan. That was powerful. With that said, I want to kind of go back to each of you stated that you were directly impacted by fines and fees. Can you tell me, when you were assessed whatever fines and fees, did a judge assess your ability to pay before imposing those fines and fees on you?
They don't never. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the question, I apologize.
That's almost it. How do you think it could have played out differently if they did? I'll pass it back to you, Daquan.
The only people they assess for a fine and a fee are rich people that lives in the suburbs that are already in a position to be able to pay a fine and fee because they already majority of the times have a connection or a relationship with those individuals or that class of people. You don't have to assess a person standing in front of you when you're looking at them and you know they don't have the ability to pay this fine and fee. So they don't even think about assessing it. The only thing going through their mind is pay the court costs, pay this, pay that, pay this, pay that. And if you don't pay that, then you're going to jail. And then when you get in jail, that's another burden on your family because they can't take care of you and you're out the equation. So then they never assess the fact whether you can pay a fine or a fee. It's obsolete. So we're not even going to sit here and make it seem like they do that. And they know they don't do it. But they'll tell the public that they do it. They're sitting in forums and make it seem like this is what they do, but they don't do it. I promise you they don't. I've never had a judge, and I've been in the criminal justice system, in and out the criminal justice system for over 25 years, and not once have I ever had a judge assess whether I could pay it. They a fine. So no, they don't.
Thank you, Daquan. Let's pass to Sangria. Did a judge assess your ability to pay before imposing fines and fees on you? And how do you think it could have played out differently if they did?
Well, actually, I was assessed. And I was assessed through a mental health assessment. And I still had to pay the court costs, fines, and fees. So my primary income at that time was, like I said, SSI. But they were still attached. Medicaid, there were some hospital bills for the victim that were still attached. The victim had Medicaid, I had Medicaid. So I don't know how the court system thought that I was going to pay that, you know, through the SSI. So it's like the system paying itself, because it would have came from out of the SSI to go right back into the system. Medicaid already paid for it, so now I will pay Medicaid back. It's kind of, it's real confusing sounding, and it's like I said, it's kind of like it's getting over on us as the community and as society, but we are already a part of the system within, you know, the social system, the justice system. So that's still attached as well. So there are things that's still attached. Although I'm making it, they are still attached, and they need to be addressed. So yes, that's basically how it has attached, has affected.
All right, thank you, Sangria. And Omar?
As many cases as I've been in and out of Mecklenburg County courts, I could probably say maybe 2% of the time they might assess my ability to pay any probation fees that will be assessed with my convictions or anything like that. And the assessment is anything, because they might ask you and you tell them you don't have a job, you don't work. And just to get a little more personal, you know, this was 16 years ago, but, you know, I was out on the bond, so had to get some lawyer fee together, was able to scramble that together, which we know they do payments, lawyers do payments. So I'm out on bond, the bondsmen do payments too, so I owe the bondsmen, I owe the lawyers, and I got to go ahead and get my best situation and go on and take this plea bargain and take this conviction. So I still owe the bondsman. Now I'm on probation with probation fees. They assessed me and I told them I didn't have a job, but did they do anything about any of those fees? No, sir. And on top of it all, just to be a little more personal, at the same time I had a newborn baby. I was a fresh father, newborn baby, payments going to the lawyers, payments going to probation, payments going to lawyers. And at the same time, I got a newborn baby looking at me like, you know, I got to eat today and tomorrow and the next day after that. So, you know, like Daquan said, you know, saying that they assess you, that's just, we not one, that's one small obstacle. We know they're going to put down and say they assess us, and they're going to say it in open court. But will they implement that in any of the fees, any of the probation fees that we're going to have to pay? And, you know, our lawyers and bonds thing, that's personal, but you can do away with these court costs and probation fees when you know I don't have a job. You know you're going to increase the return offenders ratio when I be forced with my back against the wall. You know, like that, like, you know, I've been assessed on occasions and that still didn't do anything.
Thank you for that, Omar, as well. So we have about 3 more minutes with this section, or with this session. So I want to ask in these last 3 minutes, if each of you would take 1 minute to tell us what you would propose to decision makers to do in our state to respond to the needs of our community when it comes to fines and fees. Let's start with Sangria.
I will propose that once, if a person is, you know, sentenced to time in imprisonment, and they're already living below the poverty level, that once the imprisonment time is served and completed, that the charges and everything are disposed of, and there shouldn't be any fees attached to it. You know, I don't think that we should, like, I think it should be as a whole too. We shouldn't single out, like, whether it's a woman with some children or, you know, a man, because, you know, men raise their children as well. But, you know, after doing 2.5 years away from my children, you know, I'm a loving mother, you know, and then to have to get out and scramble and worry about, you know, the mistake, the dark cloud is still over my head. because it's not done, it's not over with, you know. And then to go on and further now build myself up, and it's still there, it's not over with. So I propose that once you've already paid your debt to society, you've completed and done with, then it should be done with there. That's what I, suggest.
Thank you, Sangria. Omar, what would you propose?
It kind of go a little bit into what I had gotten into about the one of your first questions, but you know, we propose, man, that something just got to be put statewide in place, a guideline, a policy, for certain situations, and not just isolated situations, you know, more of a broad situations with current situations going with the pandemic in place to eliminate a lot of these court costs and these fines and these fees. Like I said, man, like in my county, you know, I'll be, you know, one of the first ones to sign up and be on board to make sure that our DAs and our local clerk of court are following these policies. You know, we know that if they put these policies and guidelines in play, that's not the end game. You know, that's the start game. You know, and I know Daquan over there in his county would be one of the ones on their back and making sure they follow these guidelines. So, you know, we just ask that they be put in place. You know, we got a new age of community leaders coming about, you know, and we all about holding our community accountable and also holding our local governments accountable at the same time. So, you know, putting the policy in place is what we need them to definitely do, you know, and then our communities, we're gonna do our part to make sure these policies are being set out and being carried through, and it's things being put in place so certain people know that these new guidelines are available for them, you know.
That was great. Now, Daquan, we got about 30 seconds left on this session. So can you bring it home for us and say what you would propose decision makers in our state do to respond to the needs of our community when it comes to fines and fees?
I propose that they eliminate all charges, all fines, fees, when it comes to related charges, any offense, once you be sentenced to a term of imprisonment or probation. I propose that they do not tack a fine or fee to that, because you are already being sentenced. It's like another sentence. It's like another, it's an invisible shackle. It's another form of oppression. And I propose that they allow us to have a community review board to be able to make sure that those fines and fees are not being placed on people when they go in and get sentenced, because we all know they'll tell us one thing and do something else. We all know that. So have people that have a review board in place specifically to make sure that no fines or fees be attached to any offense, any one of it, because it's all about having a sense of more justice, you know. And if you don't have that, then, you know, we're going to always stay stuck in the same position. You know, eliminate all fines and fees with terms of imprisonment or probation, because if not, then what you're actually doing is telling us we're going to lock you up and we're going to make you pay us to lock you up. When it even goes down to the bailiff, when it goes down to the clerk of court, when it goes down to transport, when it goes down to putting those shackles that you put on us, we paying for them too. So what we're saying is you can't get it on all ends. So eliminate all of those fees that goes with charges. It's simple. You got the power to do it, do it.
I want to thank each of you for joining this panel, for sharing your stories. This is the most powerful panel that we have. The lived experiences of people need to be brought to the light so that we can make next steps as a state and address these issues. So thank each of you for joining us. Now we are going to segue into our second session of the night. And I will ask that Damola cue our first video from Brandon Garrett. We're going to hear now from Brandon Garrett from Duke University, who's going to present some data about fines and fees across the state of North Carolina. We're then going to hear from judges Carr Davis and Maris in Durham, North Carolina, who co-chair the DEAR, Durham Expunction and Restoration Program. And we're going to hear from Emma Ferriola Bruckenstein, who works in Orange County with their debt relief efforts.
Hello, my name is Brandon Garrett. It's a pleasure to share my work and the work of my center, the Wilson Center for Science and Justice at Duke, on fines and fees in North Carolina. And my colleagues and I have worked on a series of studies. I wanted to share some of those findings with you. They're incredibly troubling and raise real questions about why we have not yet adopted serious, substantial, and systematic reform, given the powerful system-wide effects of criminal debt in North Carolina. I have a few slides to share with you. First, just the scale of driver's license suspensions in North Carolina are astonishing. We did a study of court data through about a year ago. We found over 1 million active driver's license suspensions in North Carolina. It's certainly more than that by now. This constitutes about 15% of all adult drivers in the state. I'll talk a little bit more about what we found looking at these driver's license suspensions. And second, a study of criminal debt in North Carolina. Third, some follow-up surveys we've done with people affected by these types of consequences. So you can notice right away, looking at these graphs, by the way, that these are enormously racially disparate. So the North Carolina population is almost 2/3 white. The suspensions, though, it is the reverse. About 2/3 of these suspensions affect people who are Black or Latinx in North Carolina. And there are multiple reasons why a driver's license can be suspended, but these suspensions that we studied are not suspensions for serious driving offenses, vehicular homicide and the like. These are suspensions because of failure to pay traffic tickets or failure to appear in traffic court or both. And we see these as closely related. The demographics of the people are very similar. People who don't appear in court may not appear because they know that they cannot pay their driver's licenses. How does the process work? Well, in general, if someone doesn't pay a traffic fine, a notice will be sent. At some point, if they don't respond, then a notice is sent to the DMV, and a suspension is automatic. Similarly, if a person doesn't appear in a traffic case in court, a notice is sent to DMV. We looked at, again, data confined to these failure to pay, failure to appear in court suspensions. And there are an enormous number of them. We have a report on this. Our results were published in the Duke Law Journal earlier this year. And again, the scale of this is vast. They disparately affect people living in counties with greater rates of poverty and with more individuals affected who are minorities. Second, we also looked at criminal debt in North Carolina, whether it's in traffic cases or other types of cases, whether it's felonies, misdemeanors, and there is a vast amount of unpaid criminal debt in North Carolina. We described in a report from earlier this year an explosion of these unpaid fines and fees. You can see at the bottom just the vast number of cases. It's well over 1 million people have criminal debt in North Carolina, and about 1 in 12 adults, over 650,000 people, have unpaid criminal debt currently. That's an enormous burden on our economy, on our people, and these fines and fees have skyrocketed in their imposition in criminal cases in North Carolina. And as we know, a huge amount of this is unpaid. It may never be paid. It's not effective revenue raising either. We have a data website, here's a link, where you can look at what is the burden of unpaid criminal debt in any given county or across the state of North Carolina. You can look at demographic patterns. Just to share a few of the figures from this interactive website. There are 1.7 million of these failure to pay entries in criminal cases, huge number per year. Many of them are still active. Just a very basic calculation estimates that this may be as much as 147 million in uncollected fees. Most of these are in traffic cases. The next biggest group are infractions, misdemeanors. The vast bulk of these are petty cases. Now, length trends. People who don't pay off their debt and cannot pay off their debt in a matter of months are likely to never do so. And there are huge numbers of people, again, who it's unpaid debt who will likely never be paid. The racial disparities are extreme, just like we saw for driver's license suspensions. This does not look like North Carolina. It is heavily weighted towards people who are Black and Latinx in North Carolina who have this unpaid criminal debt. Finally, I want to note we've also surveyed people directly affected. In one survey where we mailed surveys to folks in Wake County that have driver's license suspensions, one of the preliminary shocking findings was that much of the mail, about a third of it, was returned as undeliverable. So the state had the wrong address for them. Whatever notices they were sent saying, look, your driver's license is going to be suspended unless you act, they would not have received that mail, since we were using the same address, and these are people who received suspensions quite recently. That raises a real notice question. In terms of direct impact of license suspensions, we also surveyed people above and below the poverty line in North Carolina. Some had driver's license suspensions, others did not. We note that many of the people with suspended licenses report that they're still driving. It's hard to get around if you don't drive. Only about half said that they had tried to get their license restored, and many said that they were afraid to go to court. Some hadn't tried. White respondents were much less likely to have suspensions than Black and non-white respondents. This is associated with income too. People who are poor were much more likely to have these suspensions because after all, the suspensions occur for failure to pay traffic tickets. So in summary, fines and fees affect many, many hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians. Over time, millions have been affected by unpaid criminal debt, by these driver's license suspensions. These fines and fees cannot be collected. They're incredibly burdensome, counterproductive, discriminatory in their impacts on both racial minorities and the poor. And given the scale of the problem, it's going to take sustained work to undo the long-term effects of these fines and fees. Thank you again for giving me the chance to share. And I am grateful for the opportunity to share these results with you. You can learn more by looking on these websites, reading the reports themselves. And thank you for your interest. This is an incredibly urgent problem in North Carolina.
Good evening. I'm Amanda Maris, District Court Judge here in Durham.
And I'm Josephine Carr Davis, a Superior Court Judge here in Durham.
Together, we are the co-chairs for the advisory board to the DEAR program. DEAR is the Durham Expunction and Restoration Program. DEAR consists of two main components. One, an attempt to restore driver's licenses and to reduce traffic debt that has amassed for many people here in Durham and across the state. The other main piece is to dramatically expand access to expunctions of all kinds. Through this innovative project, we have a broad collaboration of many partners. Those partners include court partners such as ourselves, the District Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, our Clerk's Office, as well as local government through the City of Durham, the Criminal Justice Resource Center, the North Carolina Equal Access to Justice Commission, Forward Justice and Legal Aid of North Carolina, as well as our area law schools in North Carolina Central School of Law and Duke Law. In order to reach transformative change in our country and to form a more equitable justice system, it is essential that traditional court actors such as ourselves and others in the court system and local government partner with the community and justice-involved individuals in order to increase access to the courts, and that is exactly what DEAR does.
As an African American woman, I fully understand the impact that the criminal justice system has on people of color. And that's why the goals of DEAR are important and dear to me. Because the goals of DEAR are to reduce barriers as it relates to people's housing, people's employment, and people's educational opportunities. What we know is that when we provide people access, people thrive. And so I am so thrilled about the work that DEAR has accomplished thus far. DEAR has waived over $2.5 million in fines, fees, and costs, which means that we are helping people get back to more educational opportunities, more employment opportunities, and more housing opportunities. In addition, as it relates to expunctions, DEAR has filed over 800 petitions, and those petitions include various charges on each petition, and we've helped people with petition filings across the state of North Carolina.
Looking forward, we're very excited about the work that DEAR can provide as a result of the Second Chance Act. passed here in North Carolina in June of this year. The Second Chance Act has many features to it that will expand access to its functions, but specifically provides for juvenile court expunctions for those juveniles who are 16 and 17 that, had North Carolina not been the last state in the country to raise the age of juvenile jurisdiction and stop prosecuting teenagers in adult court, that these young people would not have a criminal record. And so as a result of the Second Chance Act, the DEAR program through the North Carolina Justice Center and District Attorney's Office will be collaborating to help 600 to 700 juveniles for cases here in Durham. Across the state, countless others will be helped. And we are so proud that DEAR could be the first program in the state to start providing these free legal services to restore driver's licenses and expand its functions and provide a model for this state and perhaps the country.
What we know is that in times such as these, it is important that all of us come together, like-minded individuals, to make the change and to be the change that we seek. So I am so proud and so pleased with the work that we've been able to accomplish, and I'm looking forward to a positive outcome and more things that we can do to better the lives of people in our community and beyond.
Hello everyone, my name is Emma Ferriola Breckenstein, and I'm the Restoration Legal Counsel for the Orange County Criminal Justice Resource Department. I'm joining you all today to discuss 3 initiatives coming out of Orange County regarding court fines and fees. The first of these is the Restoration Legal Counsel Program. This is a county-funded attorney position which, among other things, brings motions before the court to remit court fines, fees, and costs. This began through a collaboration with the North Carolina Justice Center and the District Attorney's Office and the Criminal Justice Resource Department, which brought motions to remit money that was suspending people's driver's licenses due to a failure to pay. Following this collaboration, Caitlin Fenhagen, the director of the Criminal Justice Resource Department, brought a proposal to the Board of County Commissioners to create a permanent position to continue and expand on that work. That position was approved and began in October of 2019. Since that time, about $15,000 in fines and fees has been remitted through motions on the basis of someone's inability to pay. The bulk of these has been for people who failed to pay on traffic court fines and costs and had their licenses suspended. The program is currently working to expand the practice of bringing motions to remit fines and fees before someone fails to pay in order to avoid the consequences of that failure to pay. Additionally, the program is hoping to work with court actors to implement a system of stronger ability to pay assessments, likely implementing the recent Administrative Office of the Courts form for relief from court financial obligations. The second program out of Orange County is the Criminal Justice Debt Relief Fund. This is an initiative that was proposed to the Chapel Hill Town Council through a collaboration of community actors, including 2 town council members, the local NAACP branch, the Orange County Clerk of Court, and the Criminal Justice Resource Department. And that proposal was to create a fund to assist Chapel Hill residents with paying court costs and fees. The fund was approved by the Town Council in February of 2020 for a 6-month pilot program with $20,000 at its disposal to disperse to Chapel Hill residents who applied. The Carborough Town Council also recently agreed to join the fund with a contribution of $7,500 that will be available to Carborough residents who applied to the fund for assistance. Right now, the fund is able to assist people in covering court costs, fees, as well as DMV fees. The fund is unable at this time to assist people in paying court fines or restitution. Additionally, if someone has a violent felony conviction on their record, they will not be eligible for the fund. The fund began receiving applicants in spring of this past year, right in the midst of the COVID pandemic, so it has been somewhat slow to take off, but at this time it's been able to approve about 10 applicants to cover a mixture of court financial obligations as well as DMV obligations. The third initiative coming out of Orange County is a set of local bar recommendations that were created by the county's Racial Justice Task Force. and sent out to the local bar in September. These recommendations contained information on the negative impacts of court financial obligations for people who are unable to pay them, as well as the negative impacts on the community at large of that system. They also contained a strong call for action to court actors, including judges, district attorneys, and public defenders. Amongst these calls for actions were to increase their knowledge of how the system of monetary obligations works in the county, as well as calling for considerations of abilities to pay at all stages of the court process, including plea negotiations, deferred prosecution agreements, as well as at sentencing. These recommendations were shared with the Judicial District Executive Council and were approved by that council before they were sent out to the local bar. And a training is being planned for court actors surrounding these recommendations in order to encourage their implementation by both judges, public defenders, and the district attorney's office. Each of these initiatives is important in mitigating the impact of court fines and fees on people who cannot afford to pay them. They help both at the stage where someone is being assessed a court financial obligation, as well as once someone has a court financial obligation that they can't pay and need assistance dealing with that. With that, I'll conclude just by saying that I do think a statewide rule requiring judges to assess a person's ability to pay is necessary in North Carolina. Each of the programs I've discussed has shown the need for assistance remitting or paying court financial obligations for people who simply cannot afford to pay them and are facing a variety of negative consequences as a result. And hopefully an ability to pay assessment that's mandated by the state would lessen the need for that type of assistance. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to transition into our third session of the night. So I will introduce our moderator, Alex Williams of Forward Justice, and we'll have Chief Justice Beasley, along with Judge Denise Hartsfield of Forsyth County and Representative Marsha Moray from the North Carolina Legislature.
So good evening, everybody.
Please keep your cameras off and you will pop up. Or turn your cameras on, I'm sorry.
We have everybody.
Apologies that I am a very poor stand-in right now for Chief Justice Sherry Beasley, who should be able to join us momentarily. She's been delayed just a little bit tonight and regrets that, but she'll be with us shortly.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get into it. Want to thank everybody, especially our panelists, for joining the elected officials and stakeholders conversation on solutions that we can accomplish together. I am Alex Williams, the criminal justice organizer at Forward Justice. I am your moderator for the evening. We have with us Representative Marsha Moray, the state legislator. We have with us Judge Denise Hartsfield of Forsyth County. And we also have Chief Justice Beasley, but we have her stand in, and we're hoping that we can get her here soon because we have some questions for her as well. But I will get right into the conversation. So my first question is for Judge Hartsfield. In regards to hearing from judges, we already heard from Judge Maris about the DARE program and its efforts to relieve people from debt as it relates to getting their driver's license back. What role do judges play in this process?
Well, judges have a duty, I believe, to make sure that our courts aren't turned, number one, into debtors' prisons, and number two, that we try to do things that we can in conjunction with other community leaders in order to make sure that people are getting what they need. In Forsyth County, we have partnered on many occasions with the Ministers Conference, the NAACP, and several other entities that have come together to help with driver's license restoration. We do clinics to help with expungement, to help people get their criminal records cleaned up so they'll be able to get a job and won't have those entries on their record that traditionally keep them. And we have a great partnership in Forsyth County with the Pro Bono project at the Wake Forest University School of Law. Last year, we did some very basic things. Along with Duke University, we had a brake light clinic. And somebody might ask, why in the world would some law students have a brake light clinic? Well, they did it because we knew that most traffic stops are under the pretext or actually because somebody's brake lights are out. And once the police have stopped you, this leads to multiple kinds of other things. So we probably put in probably 475 brake lights over 3 or 4 Saturdays, so people could show that I just had my brake lights changed and things are, you know, the way they need to be. But for me, and I think I heard one of the other panelists talk about this earlier, the thing that is really bothersome to me as we talk about bail reform and as we talk about bonds and setting bonds, recently in my county, we have had just a thrash of violent offenses by juveniles. And even though we've raised the age in North Carolina, a lot of these juveniles are on the track where they are automatically transferred up to be tried as adults in Superior Court. I'm talking about the C's, I'm talking about the E's, I'm talking about the violent felonies. We have everything from murder to attempted murder to aiding and abetting to armed robbery and other incidences like that. So it's really difficult for us to, you know, be able to, you know, not have these cases transferred up because the statute calls for automatic transfer. And as a part of that automatic transfer, after a certain period, there has to be a bond set in these cases. And the reason that this is so disheartening is that, you know, the bond reform really doesn't work here. So there's this constant struggle. And I get this struggle a lot. It's a struggle between, you know, these parents of these juveniles, because these juveniles don't have money to post their bond, and these parents who are having to post these very large bonds because their kids are looking at being tried in a higher court. So that is a process that we really need to streamline through juvenile justice. And I'm glad my fellow colleague, Marsha Murray, is on here, who was very, very, very instrumental in the whole juvenile justice reform and movement, and probably should be applauded by all of us on this call for her efforts to raise the age and all the work she did in that legislative process. But this is a very sticky situation that deals with, you know, bonds and bond reform and setting bonds. One of my favorite sayings came from a TV judge, Judge Glenda Hatchett. And Judge Hatchett used to always say, we need to be posting our children's dreams and not bonds for our children. And I have in the last month been faced with having to post some bonds per the juvenile statute. And it's been quite sad. And it's one of the things that we need to really get around, talk about, and see what can happen, particularly in these juvenile cases. But Forsyth County is on the move. We are coordinating, trying to do things to bring this community together and stop punishing people with exorbitant fines and fees when they already have a lot on their plate, including probationary fees and fines.
Thank you for that, Judge Hartsfield. And I have a follow-up question based on some of what you said. And the brake light program, it sounds, you know, great, and it sounds like it does some wonders, but I want to get to the nitty-gritty from you specifically on how do we systematically stop the impact of fines and fees on our community members?
Well, I think as a system, and I'm going to talk about my system, I think that judges and jurors need to get together. One of the things that happens on my bench is because our ages vary from probably mid to late 50s, but our youngest judge being about 32 years old. But we also have a number of judges on our bench who are affluent from birth. and who really don't understand the idea of somebody not having $400 to pay for some traffic ticket, or, you know, not having their money to pay their probationary fees. Why can't you just go to the ATM machine and get it? You know, they don't realize that people just don't have that kind of money ready to go for these kinds of events. So I think one of the more basic things we can do when we talk about a systemic agenda as it relates to bonds and fines is to educate each other. You know, help our colleagues on the bench understand that, you know, everybody doesn't have a trust fund. Everybody can't go and get this money. Everybody can't go and receive it. So I think that most basic, there needs to be a conversation. There needs to be a serious conversation among our colleagues to make them understand that, you know, this is a form of systemic racism, but not really racism, but it's certainly economic disfranchisement. This is just another assault on the poor by making them pay double, you know, for things that other people, or things they perceive other people would be able to afford. So for me, my answer is basic. Let's just start with where we are. Let's just start with who we work with and try to send that message and make sure that message resounds and they understand the differences in not only skin color, but in economic status and other areas that impact this conversation.
So, okay. Two-sided question in response to that. So should we assess the ability to pay on the front end before the fees are imposed? And also, what role do judges play in the decriminalization of poverty?
Well, I don't know if we really play a huge role in the decriminalization of poverty, except I do know this. I do know that I am keenly aware that there are just some crimes that I've never seen the majority have. One of them is second-degree trespass. I mean, second-degree trespass is a minor misdemeanor, but, you know, there's still fees associated, there's still fines. So I think in decriminalization of poverty, one of the things we can look at particularly is probation. You know, everybody kind of heralds and cheers probation as being an alternative to incarceration, but probation can be extremely expensive. Probation can be extremely long. And what probation often does is make the court almost like a bank. You know, some people are just put on probation so they can pay fines and fees. So I think eliminating those kinds of suggestions and making probation not restorative, but somehow one that is accountable for monetary payments is one simple way of doing it. And I think we're moving toward that each and every day. But in actuality, if you look at the criminal justice system, and particularly when I look at lower level misdemeanors and those kinds of things that occur in the court system, it's pretty clear to me that, you know, the whole idea of criminalization is basically in the poor African-American and Hispanic community. Now, the flip side of that is when we don't talk African-American community, there was a time when the brown community really had a lot of pressures put on it because they seemed to have cash money and they didn't really think about paying fines and fees and did it pretty readily and reluctantly. But we're moving toward a time where that's not even the case. And so the court has to be cognizant through programs like bond restoration and bond initiatives from county to county to make sure that these groups of people aren't being criminalized simply because they're poor.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So Representative Morey, what is the North Carolina legislator doing to address the ever increasing criminal court fines and fees?
Hey, Alex, thanks a lot for having me and Forward Justice. I'll tell you what the legislature did in 2016. They took away judges' discretion to remit fines and fees. And I know Judge Hartsfield was there. I was a district court judge for 18 years. And whenever we heard a case, we had the ability to remit fines and fees. If someone was indigent, had a court-appointed counsel, if they were receiving any type of public assistance, we could freely do that. We could order community service in lieu of. But the General Assembly said, oh no, we want that money to come into the fund, or the general fund. And they started keeping a scorecard. on every judge, and how many fees and fines were remitted and how many weren't. And that really gave a chilling effect on judges. So the next year, once they kept the scorecard, the number of fines and fees remitted dropped 50%, meaning more people had to pay up. But this discussion is so important. And
I have to ask, if you're not speaking, can you please mute your device, please?
addressing this very issue is Governor Cooper has signed an executive order creating the North Carolina Task Force on Racial Equity and Criminal Justice. I'm a part of that task force. There are 23 members. Justice Earls and Josh Stein, the Attorney General, are chairing it. We have been meeting since July. One of the first recommendations we have passed is a judge must determine an ability to pay. Exactly what you're talking about tonight. And ask the AOC to create a form on ability to pay any fines or fees that are imposed. And I've been listening to what Omar said and Daquan and Sangria, and we're talking the deep end too. If someone has served active time and they are released from prison or they're released from a long-term in jail, to continue to demand that they pay fines and fees, I think is unconscionable. And I think we're hearing that. Anytime a judge imposes something, we have to look, what is the ability to pay? If you can't get to court because of transportation or an emergency medical issue, should you be arrested on a failure to comply? So this issue is so important. It is being heard. We are going to send the governor recommendations December 1st. And one of the top recommendation we have already passed is ability to pay. And we're looking at a lot of other things. We're looking at cash bail. I mean, should we abolish our cash bail system on many of our crimes? And 87% of all crimes are misdemeanors. As a judge, I used to impose by statute, if there was a blood test, you had to do a $600 SBI lab fee. To be on probation, $40 a month probation. To do community service, $200 a month community service. Attorney appointment fee, $55 per hour and an appointment. So it adds up. A simple misdemeanor often led to $1,000 of debt for even a 16-year-old with a misdemeanor larceny. So you all are right on. I think this task force is addressing, we want bold recommendations, and this is going to be one of our top ones. So really happy, glad to be here and hear this conversation.
Thank you for that. And in reference to some of what you're speaking to, I just want to go ahead and ask you, how do you feel about the decriminalization of poverty?
It's horrible. And we have done it too much. And we cannot criminalize poverty. And it starts with the pickup and it starts with the bail. Someone that can afford to pay the magistrate or the bondsman their bail, they walk out for a serious crime. Someone who's, like Judge Hartsfield said, a trespass, whose failure to appear, and the statute says double a previous bond, they can't afford $500. So the criminalization of poverty, I think, is in, I know this task force mind, it's in the governor's mind, and we want to address it, and we want racial equity in our criminal justice system.
Thank you for that. With the economic crisis that we are facing, what is the legislator doing to ensure that budget shortfalls are not addressed by raising certain court costs and fees, creating an even heavier burden on community members already unable to pay the fees as they exist? Yeah. Do you see any potential for bills introduced to decrease the numbers and amounts of fines and fees during this time?
Well, Alex, someone in the criminal justice system shouldn't be paying to make the court system work. And in fact, it doesn't go to the court system. It goes to the general fund of North Carolina. But when I started out as a judge, our court costs were about $41. And when I left, they were $180. So we have seen our General Assembly over the years increase, and that has got to stop, because this is why we are where we are.
Thank you. And this is for Anna. Well, really for Chief Justice Beasley. We were really hoping to have her here tonight, and I have a particular question, and I want you to extend this to Chief Justice if possible. Ask her, was she invited to the entire event? And I say this because as y'all all saw at the beginning, we had the voices from our directly impacted, and as Whitley highlighted, that was our most powerful and most important panel. Just to hear the perspective of those who have walked the experience that we're referencing and that we're, the subject matter that we're speaking on tonight. And I would really insist upon having that question asked the Chief Justice if possible, because we invite her to this event, and it's very important because she doesn't get to hear from these people on a daily basis, not in this light. And so I would really insist that question be asked to her.
Alex, if I could, and for those of you who don't know me, my name is Anna Stearns. I am the Chief Justice's Chief of Staff. And I am sincerely apologetic for her not being able to be here right now, and assure you that if it had not been for a true emergency, she would be with you. I would love to work with you and with Whitley to set up a time for her to possibly meet privately with Daquan and Omar and Sangria, because I do know that she would love the opportunity to have heard from them tonight. She was very much looking forward to this. And I am also formerly impacted in the criminal justice system, have my own interactions with unaffordable fines and fees that hamstrung me for a while. And so this is an issue that is near and dear to my heart personally. And I think for the Chief Justice, as a district court judge in Cumberland County for a decade, she has also seen this impact people's lives on a daily basis, and is certainly filled with compassion and empathy, and determined to do something about it. Representative Morey mentioned the form that was recommended both by the Fines and Fees Coalition and by the Governor's Task Force. I'm very excited that form made it through the AOC process, has been promulgated. It is out in the field and available to folks to use. Our biggest hurdle now is education on that issue, right? We need to make sure folks know that form exists, that they have the right to ask. Much like Sangria and Daquan earlier, I never had a judge ask me whether I could pay. And quite frankly, often that was because I never got to a judge. If I'd been ticketed because my insurance had lapsed or my registration had lapsed or I didn't have my ID card with me on that particular day, my issue was handled in line with a DA. I never made it to a judge to ask, and certainly didn't know that I had the ability to do so. And so I think you all are absolutely right. We've got a lot of work to do, and we're committed to helping to get that done. And so I thank you for the opportunity to offer an explanation about the Justice's absence. I have been texting with her throughout the event, and I think she is still hopeful that she can make it on, at least for the Q&A portion of the event with the folks who are here. And we will keep our fingers crossed that we're able to pull that off. And in the meantime, I will do my best to field the questions that you had for her.
I'm looking at the time, just a quick time check, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna get ready to go into the Q&A. But I do have a couple questions if we can fit those in. And so the governor's task force has recommended a rule, but when are the directly impacted people going to see those results?
That rule has been taken under advisement. It's been shared with the Administrative Council, who advises the Supreme Court on their rule processes. And we are continuing to have discussions about the formalities of the rule, and what we need to do to make sure that it is successfully adopted by the court. As you know, that's not a unilateral decision that the Chief Justice can make. All 7 justices get to weigh in on the adoption of that rule. And so we really want to make sure that when we take that to the court, we have armed them, as all of the justices, with the information that they need to do exactly what you're doing tonight. to make sure that they understand the impact of it, the need for it, and as well as the court's legal authority to adopt it. And so that has been, as all things at the court are, a lengthy process to try to make sure that we are adequately prepared for those conversations. And my hope is that well before the end of the year, we will see movement on the adoption of the rule.
Thank you for that, Anna. And I believe that will probably wrap up our section, but I want to thank all of our panelists for the stakeholders and elected officials portion of the event. Once again, my name is Alex Williams, criminal justice organizer, and I appreciate everybody's attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I'm not sure who's moderating, but if I could just get in one plug before we end for the North Carolina Fair Chance website. It's a project that the Chief Justice, as chair of the Equal Access to Justice Commission, had set up. Right now, it's only a driver's license restoration, but in the coming weeks, we hope to also launch an expunction petition portion of the website. Anyone who has had a driver's license suspension can go to the website and request assistance from a pro bono attorney. So for free, an attorney in North Carolina will pull your driving record, evaluate the causes of your suspension, and offer you some advice about the next steps that are available to you to have your license restored. They also will eventually have kind of a question and answer form to get an expunction petition filled out. It's very confusing to decide which form to choose. There are a lot of requirements for those expunctions, and this is geared to help simplify that process. So just encourage anyone out there that is struggling with either one of those issues to make use of the website, and hope that you find it helpful.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Alex, for moderating this panel. I did see that we had someone in the attendees list that had their hand raised, and we were trying to get it typed in the chat, but if anyone has any questions, right now would be a perfect time to type those in the chat, or you can raise your hand. It looks like Mr. Michael Banner has his hand raised. I've allowed it to talk, so if you could maybe ask your question now.
If you have any questions.
Oh, pardon me. I missed the question. I'm juggling babies. What was the question again?
Oh, we just saw your hand was raised and thought you had a question for the panelists. It could have been you hit a button on the chat. No problem.
I think one of them actually pushed the wave button.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
Later on.
All right. If there are no more questions from participants, or I'm sorry, from attendees, that's going to wrap up our event for tonight. I just want to remind everyone to visit the Forward Justice website for updates on our campaign to end criminal justice debt in North Carolina. And you can also visit our North Carolina Fines and Fees Coalition website at endcriminaljusticeDebtNC.org. There's more information there on fines and fees in North Carolina, resources. There's a portal that allows you to share your story as it relates to criminal court fines and fees in North Carolina. I'll also say, please feel free to reach out to us directly or send messages through our website so that we are aware of what's going on across the state. I'm going to pause because I actually see a hand raised before we close out. Daquan, you had a question?
Yes. Excuse me. Like first of all, I want to appreciate everybody that came on and gave us your valuable time for being here. But it's bothering me right now that we actually have to have a conversation about eliminating fines and fees when we all know that this disproportionately affects the Black community. We have all different racial equality task force, access to equal access to justice. And to me, justice is just I see equality being done. And if there's no equality in it, there's no justice. This is simple. It doesn't take 10, 15, 20, 30 conversations. I appreciate the conversations. I appreciate us sitting down, having a conversation. But when you got hardcore data, when you have facts, when you have all of these things that's in your face, and it's showing you, when you have judges like the beautiful judge, Denise Hartsfield, just hearing the judge say the things that she said, you know, it as a directly impacted person, you know, the hearing a judge say that, because the mass incarceration has built a lot of things in me. And some of those things that it built in me, it was because of the inequalities that and the injustice that was dealt in me. But the system, it built a lot of things in me, such as bitterness towards a system, such as hatred towards a system. But that was before I had to really get into my mind and become an activist and become a passionate person who want to bring about a change. And set that to the side and be on the front line and want to be better for my community and be an asset to my community instead of a liability. So when I see, and I have to sit back here and hear judges, representatives, all of these people talk about we know it does this to the Black community. We know it does that to the Black community. We know it does this. Why do we have to have a conversation when everybody got the power to change? How can I tell my child to trust in a system that all they want to do is play politics and have a conversation when we suffering? While you having conversations, while you sitting in your office having a conversation, we still suffering. It don't take but a stroke of a pen to give me 50 years. It don't take but a stroke of a pen to give me a $50,000 fine. It don't take but a stroke of a pen to do whatever you doing to us. Let's stop playing games and get it done. It don't take much. It don't take much but to sit down and say, hey, here's the facts, here's the numbers, here's what it's doing, and here's where they are at. Equal access to justice. What justice is you talking about? Because it got to be two sides. Because it sure ain't on my side. It sure ain't on my side, because every day I'm seeing my people in the community struggling because they can't pay these fines. I see my people in the community struggling because they ain't got jobs. I see all of these things. We're the ones out here on the front lines, the organizers, the ones that y'all talking about having these conversations with. Get out your office and go in the community and talk to these people. Go out here and really engage these people in real conversations and understand the pain and the passion and the built up stuff that we got in us towards a system that all they want to do is have a conversation and go back to their house and lock their door and live in comfortability while we still sitting here living below the poverty level because everybody want to have a conversation. Put the ink to the paper and get it done, because you got the power. Chief Judge Beasley, nobody should be afraid to offend nobody about a relationship. You don't want to offend this person because this judge said this judge said that. Listen, let's get it done, please. I'm asking y'all. We ain't gonna keep begging people to do stuff for us, because it's going to build a lot of tension, and we're going to keep educating ourselves, and we're going to keep going and studying and learning and dealing with these facts. And we're going to take these facts to the community, the same community that you're going to go to and ask to vote for you because you're an elected official. We're going to show the community these facts. We're going to show the community what y'all are doing, and we're going to show y'all that what we were asking for and what we're going to want. And all we want is you to take it out, stop eliminating it, and just eliminate it out the statute. It's simple. It's simple. Stop playing with us. Stop trying to play with our intelligence, because we ain't dumb. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for that comment, Daquan. I will give a welcome. We have 2 more minutes to Chief Justice Beasley. Welcome, Justice Beasley. So we were just wrapping up for the night. Not sure if you want to have a moment to address the crowd.
First of all, I just really want to apologize. We had some extenuating circumstances that came up this evening, but I just want you all to know, thank you, first of all, Whitley, for inviting me to be here this evening. But this is, as I've worked to serve as Chief Justice, one of the things I've really worked very hard to do is to try to instill trust and confidence in our court system. I take this issue around fines and fees very, very seriously. I don't want to repeat everything that Anna may have just said to you all, but it's been really important to me to impress upon our judges that this is a very serious issue, that they have every right and really obligation to determine ability to pay. It's really, I mean, our U.S. Supreme Court has held that that's exactly what judges are supposed to do. And so we will continue with that effort, but so much more. I think Anna probably talked to you about the form that has been approved. We're very excited about that. And we're also really excited about the proposed rule change. So of all of my priorities, please know that this is the first. And I appreciate the fact that this issue impacts everybody's everyday lives, and I don't take it lightly. And I'm very delighted that you all took the time to be here to impress upon us how important this issue is, how it impacts your everyday lives. And please do know that it is a priority for me.
Thank you, Justice Beasley. We have to wrap up because it's 7:30, but it would be great if we could get a commitment from you to possibly come back together with the first panel of people who are directly impacted by this issue and really wanted to have some engagement with you to speak about it. If we could maybe just get a commitment from you that that could happen in the coming weeks so that we can speak to the community.
I'd be glad to do that. And again, I do apologize because your time is very precious. I do appreciate that. So, but yes, I'd be glad to do that.
Thank you. So everyone, again, please feel free to reach out to the Fines and Fees Coalition or folks at Forward Justice directly, or you can send messages through our websites so that we are aware of what's going on across the state. We're going to continue our statewide advocacy efforts, and we want you all to continue your local advocacy efforts, and we're willing to support you with the resources to do so. We're very, very excited to continue working with all of you and continuing this campaign to end criminal justice debt in North Carolina. Thank you all and have a great weekend.